Alrighty, folks, welcome to another episode of Unearth Horticulture. Today, I have some fun things set up for us. I haven't done a floral design episode in a while, and lately I've had my creative juices flowing. I created some ornaments and wall mounts for sale for the holidays this season, and if you haven't seen them, go check them out on my website. I'm very proud of them, and if you love Kansas at all, like I do, you're gonna want these for your holiday decorations. But today I am going to show you how to create a tablescape. Now, if you have been following me for over a year now, you know that last Thanksgiving I actually created a massive tablescape design with dried orange slices and paper white bulbs and all kinds of horticultural accoutrements. And I really had a lot of fun doing that. I aired it on Thanksgiving, and it was a lot of fun. Well, this year I'm actually getting ahead of the ball game. I am actually going to air this a few days before Thanksgiving, and you'll be able to see this and maybe incorporate it into your Thanksgiving and Christmas celebrations, but or at least, you know, the ideas of it. So these are actually my last dried flowers of the season, my last stalk. I still have a few bunches left on the bus, and then I've got my wall mounts and ornaments, but that is it, folks, for the year. So make sure you come on the bus and snatch up those last items. I've got some goldenrod here, some white dahlia, some prairie alfalfa seed heads. I've got a little bit of vernonia left, some broomweed, some false indigo pods. Anyways, I've got lots of materials left here that I'm going to show you how to create a Kansas themed, a little bit smaller than last year, a little bit more realistic tablescape. So let's dive in. Before you can even begin designing your tablescape, you need to think practically. You need to think about the space that you're going to have available to you. Now, especially with a Kansas holiday gathering, there are two very important things: food and the conversation. And to make sure your guests are comfortable, you want to make sure that your tablescape doesn't get in the way of their comfort in these two main things. So first of all, where food is concerned, you need to consider how the food is being served. If the food is being set on the table and passed family style, then you might not have very much room for a tablescape, because you don't want there to not be enough room for the food, or for people to have to move things in order to set down dishes. If the food is being served buffet style, then you still need to consider if there's going to be things like salt and pepper shakers and condiments and toothpicks on the table. So it's important to think about ways you can incorporate those into your tablescape so that they're accessible to your guests. The second part is conversation, and you don't want to get in the way of people being able to converse with one another. So that means you don't want tall things in the line of sight so that people are having to lean around to see and talk to each other, to have those wonderful conversations. So those are the practical sides of tablescaping. Another thing you might want to think about is, if you're the host for this get-together, you may not want to be thinking about decorations the day of cooking and cleaning, and all those last-minute preparations are necessary. So if you can plan ahead as much as possible and create the design as much as possible ahead, then that is going to bode well for you, so that you can just throw it together, set it out the day of or the night before you're going to have your guests over. So that is one of the reasons I love my design this year, and we're going to get into that here in a second. So you've thought about the practical side of your tablescape design. You've thought about your guest comfort, and you've thought about the day of schedule and how that's going to work into your tablescape plan. Now it's time for the actual fun part, which is designing what elements are going to be incorporated into your tablescape, the design of it. So I like to start with one element and work my way out from there. It's kind of a ripple effect. So I knew this year I wanted to scale down the size, and I wanted to incorporate my dried native botanicals into the tablescape arrangement. The reason I like incorporating dried flowers into this is because they're gonna last for a long time. Now, I know I'm gonna incorporate dried flowers, and so I wanna think about what goes well with those and how I'm gonna incorporate those into the design. So I actually, when I was foraging, I picked up a few fence post remnants. So my great grandpa actually drove the fence posts on this property, and these are made from Osage orange trees. And they're really dense wood. They're really great. They've lasted many, many, many decades. But when we have a controlled burn every year, some of the fence posts bite the dust. And so I like to go collect the remnants because they're great for floral design and interior design, incorporating them. They're really cool, and I feel a little bit connected to them in my family history. So what a great thing to incorporate for Thanksgiving, am I right? So this is something I wanted to use as my base for the floral design, and we're gonna get into ways I'm gonna incorporate those. But now I have two elements, right? I've got my dried flowers, I've got some texture, I've got the base for how those flowers are gonna be incorporated. Now I need to think about some of the other elements. So I talked about food service. So my family is going to be eating a buffet style food service. So I know that I have room to work with on the table, but also that I need to incorporate things like toothpick holders and salt and pepper shakers and condiments onto the table. So I'll show you in a bit here how I'm going to do those. But I knew that for the fall and winter, I love to work with different metals, semi-precious metals in particular. So I have brass candlesticks that are going to offer some mood lighting, some texture, some height, some dimension. And then I also have these really cute turn of the century toothpick holders. They're tarnished silver, and I like the tarnished look for the fall and the winter. And there's a little bird on them, and they've got even a wishbone stand on them. So those are going to be some fun toothpick holders to have on the table. And then I've got some really cool salt and pepper shakers to show you here in a second. But the main thing is I wanted dried botanicals. I wanted the burnt wood look, and then some semi-precious metals. So I'm getting my textures, I'm getting my colors, that reminds me. So as you can see here, I've got a lot of golds. I've got some goldenrod, some browns, some whites, silvers, some black, but no red. And it's a festive time of year, and we need some red incorporated. So one element I haven't talked about yet is the tablecloth. This is actually a table runner, and I am going to use this as the backbone, the base of my design. It is what I would call a cranberry red, and it will probably lay on top of a lace tablecloth. And I like using red for the base since I don't have any other red incorporated into the design of the florals or any of the other elements. And it's going to really make the design pop, add some more dimension through color that way. We talked color, texture, dimension. So let's continue to play on that word, that dimension. So it's kind of hard with tablescapes. You don't want really tall things to block people's conversation, but it's still important to create some height differences in your design. So I've got a few ways I'm going to play with dimension. So I mentioned I've got these candlestick holders that are tall, that they're going to hold that light above the rest of the tablescape design. But there are two ways I thought I could add dimension by my use of botanicals, and that's what I want to talk about next. The first way I came up with to incorporate the botanicals in with the fence post remnants was to use wire, and I kind of created a cage. And you can see a little bit here that I wrapped the floral wire, it's black, around the wood, which I kind of like because it reminds you of fencing a little bit. And then I tucked pieces of dried flowers into the design. And the idea is that this can lay on the table in amongst the tablescape. And I really like this because it allows for conversation over it, but I also thought this could be a cool wall hanging when I'm done with it. I could tie some twine around it and hang this on the wall however I like, or incorporate it onto a mantelpiece design. So I really liked this option. Plus, it's a little bit more simple if you want to try your hand at doing this kind of design. the second type of design that I toyed with and that I think I'm gonna actually go with actually adds a lot more dimension to the tablescape, which is why I'm going with it. And it's a great way to incorporate a more artistic quality to the design. It's a little bit more difficult and a little bit more time consuming, but I thought, hey, I've got all the time to show you cool new floral design tricks. This is called a landscape floral design or a naturalistic floral design. And the idea behind it is that you're creating a landscape view snapshot in your design. So you're creating something that looks like something that would occur in nature naturally. You're incorporating your materials in that way and creating a little miniature landscape design in a floral arrangement. So I've got these wood pieces here, and I've already started to show you kind of what this is going to look like. So it's going to add some height, but what I've been doing is I've been using my trusty drill here, Milwaukee, to drill pilot holes in the wood without splitting it, being very careful. Really small holes that are just the right diameter for my stems. Then the idea is I'm going to take my acid-free herbarium glue, actually, and it's really got a nice tip here to get in those drill holes, and I'm going to glue the stems in so that they stay put. So one really important thing as a floral designer to keep in mind is you want it to stay put. You want to be able to move it around without it falling to pieces, especially if you're wanting to do this ahead of time and just throw it on the table. You know, it's a great way to glue. Is not always my favorite thing to use, but this is a very light application of it. So it's not like it's just going to be hot glued together. It'll still be really skillful and classy. So I'm just going to go ahead and get going. I'm going to time lapse this part so you can see me at work. And let's see what I come up with. So as I've been designing here, I've been thinking a lot about how I define this design as a naturalistic landscape floral design. And I still would say, yes, it is a naturalistic design, but, and let me first of all tell you why it's classified in that way, or what elements make it a naturalistic design. First of all, I am using the materials that are from nature, and I am placing them at their heights that you would find them in nature compared to themselves. So this is how I would see them occurring in the prairie. So the broomweed is the lowest, and then I move up to the goldenrod and the solidago, which can get quite tall. It can get up to 3 to 4 feet tall. And then I've got some the alfalfa is in amongst the solidago at that height, and then the dahlia species here that I have worked in is definitely going to be the tallest when you find it out in the prairie. So in that way, I'm working with the heights and the dimension in the same way that you would with a naturalistic landscape floral design. But what's different about this one is this doesn't look like, you wouldn't see the plants growing this way in nature. They don't have any kind of organic shape to the lines of this design. In this way, it is what we would call a parallel design. Parallel design just means that you're placing your stems upright, perpendicular to your container, or the fence post in this case, and you're spacing them pretty evenly along the way. So this is also a parallel design. And you'll find if you get into floral design or any artistic avenue for that matter, you'll find that there's many ways you can classify different works. And floral design is no exception. So I'm just gonna call this a naturalistic parallel design. Let's go with that. All right. So I wanna continue on. I'm gonna do some others. I'm gonna demonstrate how to do this. I've already drilled the holes in this piece because I've done that other one. I kind of drilled as I went, and I realized I was breaking a lot of stems, so I didn't want to drill as I go. Just pro tip, learn from experience. And I'm going to, I went ahead and pre-drilled these holes, and I used 2 different drill bit sizes based on the difference in stem diameter of the broomweed versus the solidago. Honestly, with different heights of plants, you're gonna have thicker stems like the taller the plant gets. So I kept that in mind. So all of the smaller drilled holes are towards the front of my design, and then all of the larger drilled holes are towards the back. So I'm gonna go ahead and stick these stems. I will say I'm actually going to kind of pre-cut these. What's nice about dried florals is you can actually pre-cut, and I'm gonna pre-stick them before I glue them just to make sure that I've got the pieces where I want them. So I have set the broomweed here in the first row of this parallel design, and I'm gonna kind of let the glue set up a little bit before I start the next row. While I'm letting that set up, this is an excellent opportunity to talk about something else. When you are making centerpieces or anything that it's gonna set, you're trying to duplicate or make repeat patterns, it's really important that you have your original set in front of you so that you can mock that pattern. You want to make everything, you know, look not the same exactly, but you want it to look like the same height and consistent, like consistently themed, using the same ratio of stems, that kind of thing, and making sure that it looks similar. All right, so I finished up this this part of the Tablescape design. I have glued them all in. It still needs to dry a little bit more, but I just wanted to walk you through the elements that I used. So I have the broomweed here in the front. I love some good old broomweed. It's got some nice evergreen characteristics. I've got my solidago, and I harvested my bunches at different times of year. So I've got some that are more fluffed up and a little lighter in color because the seeds were a little bit more mature, like 1 to 2 weeks more mature than some of these others where the flower heads were still pretty tight and closed. So that adds some different color texture in those. I've got my brown alfalfa seed heads, and then also my white dahlia here. I only used a couple stems because there's multiple inflorescences on each stem, so I thought it turned out pretty good. It still needs to dry, like I mentioned, so I wanted to show you here though. Here are my 2 units. They look really quite similar in height. They're not the same. I use different counts of stems, but they look really similar. So I've got these done. So next up is the Tablescape. I gotta clean all this mess up first. This is why I suggest doing this ahead of time. All right, so I finally got cleaned up. I will say I love dried florals, but they do make quite a mess. Another reason not to do this the day of. Tablescaping is one of those things you'll want to keep the vacuum handy so you can get all those pieces cleaned up before you have company over. So I mentioned that you're going to want to do this ahead of time. Obviously, I'm doing this ahead of time. We're still a week out from Thanksgiving at this point while I'm filming this. And so I've got a tray here that I'm putting all of my Tablescape elements together on. So it's all ready to go. So all I have to do is assemble it on the day of. But for you, I am going to go ahead and assemble it so that you can see at least what the Tablescape is going to look like. And yeah, I'm really excited to see how it turns out. So let's get going. Okay, so the first step is I'm going to pull all the chairs away from the table so that I don't get them dirty and so that I don't trip because I am a klutz. And that'll help me be able to get the tablecloth laid on there right. I am not putting the base tablecloth down because it needs ironing and I have not done that yet. And I prefer to iron actually right before I set it out so that it doesn't get wrinkled in between. So I am going to just put the runner down for effect so you can see how that looks. Actually, this runner needs pressing, so I'll be right back. All right, I'm back after steaming myself up downstairs in the sewing room. All right, I did a quick job. I probably need to spend more time on this runner, but I'm an impatient gal sometimes. Next, I am going to add the main element, which is the florals. I've got them right here. As you can see, I'm very excited about them. So since these are a one-sided design and there's going to be people seated around the entire table, I am going to do a little bit of playing here with facing them. One needs to face one direction and one is going to face the other direction. And I'm going to kind of overlap them as such. I think always with tablescaping that there's a little bit of an element of playing with it and tweaking it according to what you think is best. All right, next I'm going to work with the candlesticks. I'm going to do one right there. I'm going to do one right there and one right there. Make sure you leave room for your table settings, so that's really important. I like working with asymmetric styles here. All right, next thing, I talked about this a little bit in the intro, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. It's been a little bit ago now. Salt and pepper shakers, toothpick holders, condiments, make sure, I like to work them into the design. I like to match the table settings, the place settings with the actual design. It makes it look more professional and planned out. So normally, probably in this setting, I would have a salt and pepper shakers on each side of the table. But for today, you know, I've got them placed on this side. I'm going to definitely add my toothpick holders. I was very excited about these. Honestly, these were some of the main inspiration for my tablescape design, the toothpick holders, because, you know, toothpicks, they're important on the table, especially if you're serving any type of meat or corn or things, you know, it's important to make sure your guests have everything that they could need at the table so that once they start eating, they can just sit there and feast and talk and enjoy company of others and those that maybe you don't see very often. I'm not going to overload the toothpick holders. Okay. I did not need 3 boxes of toothpicks. Okay, so I'm gonna put the toothpicks in and around the tablescape. Actually, I'm gonna throw my third one on. I do think it's needed because I can imagine passing salt and pepper shakers. I don't know, I feel like the toothpicks should be at the ready so you don't have to pass those. Plus, if they're part of the tablescape, then you don't really want them moved around as much. So, there we go. Okay, so honestly, well, I need my candlesticks, so let me go grab those. Okay, so I went and grabbed red tapers because I like how they're gonna draw the color of the tablecloth into the tablescape design. I need to melt the bottoms to get them to stick in to their tapers. Pro tip, you don't want your tapers falling over on dried florals when you're hosting your guests. So we're gonna do that now. Doesn't take much. All right, we're gonna let it cool off there. All right, gotta put the chairs back here. Put the tapers back in their place. All right, this is the time for last minute checks. Make sure there's no fuzzes or dried flour crumbs on the table. And I'm really liking the look of this. I think this is probably the coolest tablescape that I have done. I really like it a lot. It's super It looks kind of ancient, primitive with the candlesticks and the tarnished silver. And I really like the overall look of it. So I'm going to give you an up close look here now. All right, all that's left is to light the tapers. And they're new, so this might take some effort. I love lighting new candles. All right, let those burn a little bit here. I should have probably straightened the wicks, but you know, you live and you learn. We'll see if that one catches on. All right. So you can see here, this tablescape, I'm gonna give you a full rotation. I really like how simplistic it is. I can't wait to add table settings here. There's plenty of room for extra condiments and adding things to the table. Your guests aren't gonna feel impeded in conversation. And I think it's really gonna add to the mood of our get together here. I really enjoy this one. I really think that this one turned out great. I'm always pleasantly surprised by how my tablescapes turn out, because they're one of those things that they don't really take form until they do, and you can really see how they turn out. So there you have it. There is a holiday tablescape, and I can't wait to set it all up and let the family see it.